said Grant Wood, Edward Hopper.
Welcome to Getting Sketchy Live, brought to you by thevirtualinstructor.com. And now, let's get sketchy.
Hello there, everyone. Matt here with thevirtualinstructor.com, and welcome to Getting Sketchy Live. Of course, the greatest live broadcast in all of YouTube. What we do here on Getting Sketchy is either myself or my good friend and artist, who's the other artist, Ashley, we try to create a drawing for you inside of 45 minutes live for your viewing pleasure. And we also try to sprinkle in a little bit of instruction in as well. And this season is all about creating artworks in the style of different artists from history. And tonight, Ashley's going to be doing the drawing, and he's sitting right over there. How are you doing tonight, Ashley?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks for asking. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you folks are doing well out there also. We're drawing with some relatively common materials tonight, so I hope that you'll follow along.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't have the materials we're working with tonight, that's fine. You can still follow along with other materials, of course. The point of this, of course, is to create a looser, sketchier drawing inside of just 45 minutes. So we're not going to create a complete, refined piece of artwork. So that means you can use whatever medium you want. Tonight, Ashley's going to be using oil pastels, and he'll go through that in just a minute. But of course, you can use any medium that you want for this. Now, I'll remind you, since this is live on YouTube, we do have a chat box. You can, of course, post comments and questions. But if you do want your comment or question addressed, and you want it to be front and center, we do encourage you to use the super chat function here on YouTube. It does cost a little bit of money, but of course that helps us out with our production cost and shows your support for what we're doing here as well. So if you do have a comment or a question that you want to be addressed and you want everyone to see it, please use the super chat function, of course. And if you do like this video, I would encourage you to like it. And of course, if you haven't done so yet, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you can catch all of our live broadcasts and also all of the videos that I post on here as well. Now, if you want to take your drawing and painting skills to a whole nother level, then I would suggest you check out the membership program that we have over at thevirtualinstructor.com. If you don't know about it, so the membership program includes a variety of drawing and painting courses on a variety of subject matter and media. I think I'm up to 21 courses there, and the courses are really in depth too. They're not just one demonstration. There are several different demonstrations. And we also do live lessons, which are broadcast on Wednesday evenings at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So after we do this broadcast here on YouTube, we'll switch over to the channel over at thevirtualinstructor.com, which is only available to members, and do our live broadcast there. These live lessons are more in depth. They're complete pieces of artwork that we create over many weeks. There's also weekly critiques as part of the Members Minute, and there's also a year-long curriculum for visual arts teachers that includes resources for teachers to use in their classroom. Now, of course, if you want to learn more about the membership program, there's a link in the description below this video. Also, if you want to just check out 3 of our course videos and ebooks for free, there's a link in the description below for that as well. That will also put you on our mailing list, so you'll receive newsletters and a bunch of free lessons as well if you do that. Again, links for both of those things are in the description below this video. And Ashley, do you want to say anything about your artist tonight before we take a look at the artworks?
Yeah, my artist is Edward Hopper tonight, and I'm attracted to Edward Hopper's artwork because of the time period. It really kind of transforms me to a new time. Actually an old time, the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. And what attracts me to his artwork, compositionally, I guess, is the high contrast, interplay of light and shadow. There's a lot of hard edges, a little bit of a simplification to the subject, and typically vibrant colors, not necessarily what we're going to be working with tonight, but he did a lot of work with people, worked mostly with figurative artwork in urban scenes, and that's not what we're going to do tonight, but he did kind of a quiet still life of a coffee cup once, and that's what we're going to be drawing instead. And many of his scenes depict people in diners and cafes kind of sitting by themselves drinking coffee, and so I thought that would be an appropriate subject. We've got some long cast shadows, an interplay of the light and shade, and pretty stark light, which was common to his composition. So I'm attracted to his work because of the time period it was created in, and then also that interplay between light and shade and sort of the solitude that is a motif across his body of work.
And I'll bring up some of Edward Hopper's artworks now, if I can.
Yeah, there's Nighthawks, his most famous artwork. Again, we've got folks in a cafe. It looks like a city. It should be busy, but it's kind of look like a little bit of a group of lonely people late at night. There's the still life that I referenced before. On the left, it's a coffee cup with a long shadow, similar to our subject tonight, and a woman in a cafe drinking as much. And I think this one is called the hotel or hotel room, something like that. And again, there's 2 bags packed, but she's in there by herself reading. Again, it's kind of quiet, and she feels a little bit isolated. You can see that stark light on her from above.
All right, are you ready to switch over to the main camera?
Yeah, I think so. Let's go ahead and do it.
Get into this one.
All right, so you can see our reference there on the left. Again, it's that stark light up against the coffee cup, and a little bright spot of color, the napkin that's behind it. Plenty of empty space, and of course we can see that shadow next to the cup moving towards the left. That cast shadow that is a little bit of a hallmark of Edward Hopper's artwork. We're going to be using Strathmore. I'm going to be using Strathmore pastel paper. It is a light blue color, and it does have a tooth associated with it. It is intended for pastel. I was talking to Matt about this paper before we went live because a lot of times we use Canson Mitance paper, and this is not that. It does have a similar texture to the more lightly textured side of Mitance, but it's not quite as thick of a page. So it probably won't accept as many layers as Canson Mitance paper would, but it's still good paper. I do have some oil pastels. I have them in a ring. There we are. I have a selection here. I don't want to mark up my page, but it's just a selection of the colors that I intend to use. There's not a whole lot of colors in here, but there's not much to the subject matter as far as variety goes. And I hope to use some of the colors in multiple places. I've got a blue that I plan to use, maybe some in the cup, as well as on the brown table. So if some of these colors or some of the subject matter can share these colors, we should interject a little bit of harmony into our mixtures. All right, that didn't mark up the paper too bad, sliding my ring of pastels over. These are not expensive pastels. These are student grade pastels. You can see there, they're called School Smart, and they're soft compared to maybe other media, but they're pretty hard for oil pastels. So we'll see what we can do with these somewhat limited, or I don't want to use the word mediocre. We'll see what we can do with these mediocre oil pastels.
And I forgot to tell the folks that this photo reference is available on the YouTube channel. To access this reference, so you can download it for yourself, all you have to do is click on the little icon of my face in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, and then click on the Community tab, and that will take you to the post that has this file for you to download.
Oh, great. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. Incidentally, we are kind of looking down at the coffee cup, and I kind of imagine when I took this picture that it puts us in the Edward Hopper painting. You know, he's got all these folks sitting around in diners and cafes looking at their coffee mugs. We're that person now. So in that way, I think it kind of feels kind of cool. So yeah. I think we're ready. I'm going to just use a regular writing pencil, a number 2 pencil, I believe, to get started. I don't want to make too dark of marks, so I wouldn't go any darker than a number 2 pencil. But the pencil marks pretty much mingle and mix into the heavier application of oil pastels anyway. So use whatever you're comfortable with. Okay. Oh, incidentally, the size of my paper is 7 inches tall by 4.75 or 4 3/4 inches wide. That's the same proportion as our reference. Yours can be a different size, but if it's the same proportion, then you can use the edges of the paper to help measure sort of the negative space between your subject, the coffee cup, and like I said, the edge of the paper. So it's always advantageous to have a sheet of paper blocked off or bordered off the same size or same proportion rather as your reference.
Okay, are you ready for the timer?
Yeah, let's go ahead and bring up the timer.
45 minutes
and
on
we'll
the
get
clock.
started.
Starts now.
All right, reading glasses down. Here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and start just by trying to place the ellipse. And the ellipse of our coffee cup is barely above center. So I feel like this is the center of the paper. So I've just moved up a little bit from there and put a mark where I think the ellipse is gonna start. And we'll just...
So you mentioned you have a blue that you're going to be using on the coffee mug.
That's right.
And I notice, of course, that the handkerchief is orange.
Right. That seemed so that's partly why I picked blue.
So you're going to try to kind of pull out a complementary
right.
scheme.
If any little bits of the blue show through, they should play nice with the colors in the composition.
And I think in looking at Edward Hopper's artworks, he likes the play between kind of warm highlights and cool shadows. Seems like that happens pretty frequently in his artworks.
Yeah, I guess he's somewhat of a temperature painter in that way. All right, I think I need to stretch out my mug a little bit. I was measuring my screen with my pencil. I'm drawing from an iPad, so I'm going to stretch this out a little bit so the inner ellipse will erase that. That was our first go. Sometimes I have students ask for help, and when I get to their table, there's nothing on their paper, and I tell them they've got to draw it wrong first before I can help them draw it right. We've got to, show your work. Show your work. A little bit like that.
Now, are you choosing to start with the coffee mug for any particular reason instead of the handkerchief?
It's a pretty hard-edged shape, and the ellipse is almost a circle, and so it felt like it's kind of geometric, so I felt like it would be a good place to start. And then we'll just draw the cloth off of there, where you're looking at where it intersects with the ellipse of the mug. So that's my reasoning.
Makes sense to me.
All right, we'll thin this out a little bit.
Ellipses can be difficult to draw.
Oh, yeah. They're a challenge every time.
I do have a YouTube video out there on drawing ellipses if you need a little bit of help with that. There's a more structured approach that might help you with that. So if you do a little search for that, you might be able to find it.
All right, pretty smooth curve down to the bottom, and its curvature picks up a little bit right around the bottom and then stretches out some on the other side. You almost can't tell there's a bottom. It almost feels like it's a nice and smooth curve all the way around, so you don't want any corners down here on your coffee mug, even though we know there's a flat bottom to it and a definitive corner where the side meets the bottom. We really can't see that because we are looking down at our subject pretty dramatically.
I like the diagonal arrangement of the handkerchief and the coffee mug.
Yeah, thanks. It's hard to compose with two objects. I find it hard.
Yeah, two objects is definitely more difficult because sometimes there's a little bit of competition between the two subjects.
Yeah.
When you have an odd number, it seems like one kind of sticks out more than the others.
Right. I like usually 3s and 5s is my rule in the classroom for...
And you're breaking the rules.
Yeah, breaking the rules. That's right. Of course, I did that series a number of seasons ago on things that come in pairs, and I got a lot of practice composing with two things, like a salt and pepper shaker or two electrical plugs, things like that. So did get a little bit of practice in that season. All right, so we'll just hint at our... I think that's a good spot. It looks like on the handle, the top portion and the edge that's closest to us, if it were to keep going, it would almost run right into the edge of the lips. So that feels like the right place. There is a little bit of an opening there where we can see through our handle, a small margin. All right, let's think about this. Does it look proportional? I almost feel like the back of the ellipse, probably playing games with myself, could come down couple of millimeters. Just want to spend just a minute. We don't have a minute to spare, but just a minute taking a look at what we've done before we move on to the cloth. And I'm going to move this up a little bit. So
Mary Elizabeth mentions the Zorn palette and asks, is this a Zorn palette? And what do you think of the Zorn palette?
Not exactly.
Yeah, he mentioned he was going to use some blue.
Right. I mean, I do have black and brown. I'm not really I don't even think there's a yellow in here. So I don't have a yellow ochre. I've got some secondary colors, and I actually have two blues. One is more like a navy blue, and the other is pretty much a cerulean blue, sky blue, cerulean blue.
And for those of you who don't know, the Zorn palette is a limited palette, meaning that there's only a few colors that are used, and those colors, if I recall correctly, are a black, a red, yellow, and white.
A lot like Diego Velázquez painted.
Yeah, so you'll notice there's
before.
no blue in there. So you have two of the three primary colors, and the black actually acts as the blue. When you mix it with white, it has kind of a cooler gray appearance.
And some blacks, and I'm not sure exactly what black he used. It could have been lamp black, which is cooler than ivory black, which most of us use if we paint with black nowadays. So some of those blues that the old masters, for lack of a better term, used, they were pretty cool anyway.
Yeah, some blacks are made by adding more of a warmer pigment like a brown, and those browns will not work, or those blacks won't work for the Zorn palette because they'll create just warm grays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's see. There's lamp black, there's ivory black, there's bone black. That's one you don't see too often anymore. Can you think of any other blacks, black pigments?
No, I think you covered it.
Is there just three?
I didn't even know there was a bone black.
Yeah, bone black.
Why is it called bone black?
I'm pretty sure it was made from burned bones at one time. Charred bones.
Oh, maybe that's why they don't
I was told, anymore. And you hear rumors in art school. I was told that lamp black was originally made from the soot inside of lamps. Years ago.
That sounds plausible.
Just kind of scrape all that stuff out of there, and mix it up with some linseed oil, and you're ready to go with your lamp black. Now, is that true? I don't know, but it sounds plausible. All right, so we're bumping in our shape here. I'm keeping things pretty angular. It's a pretty angular napkin anyway. And there's a lot of nuance in here that will not be captured tonight, partly because of the timer, but also because we're working in the style of Edward Hopper. And he kind of, he simplified his subjects just a little bit. It was a style. It wasn't an abstract artist like Picasso that we looked at last week that dramatically changed his subjects, but a really small change. We can just call that stylization. And that's what Edward Hopper was into.
Now, a couple of people are adding a couple of blacks here. Carbon black.
Carbon black? Okay.
I'm not sure if that's a pigment for paint.
For paint, yeah, that's what I was wondering.
There are carbon black pencils. And then there's Mars black.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Obvious one.
I knew I was leaving one out. That I was familiar with.
Miggy Crash reminds us of that.
Mars black.
And then Jan says there's recently a new black, Jane's Black, by Daniel Smith Watercolors.
Jane's Black.
Yeah.
What an interesting name.
I think he just took the tube from Jane
and named it.
Said this is Jane's Black.
This is Jane's Black.
Yeah. Matt's Black's over there in the drawer.
That's funny.
Earlier on, there was a question that was asked. Was it a purposeful compositional decision to have both elements go off the edge of the picture plane on both sides?
Yes, it was. I like to engage the edges of the picture plane some. I actually usually like to try to engage three edges. Now, a lot of times on Getting Sketchy, we do drawings that are just an object in the middle because these are sketches. They don't have to necessarily be fleshed out compositions. This one is a little bit more for me. So I usually like to engage three edges of the picture plane, particularly the right and the left and the bottom. But in this case, it's just the right and the left. Otherwise, sometimes it feels like your finished art is in fact a study or a sketch, or it can feel, let's see, almost like the background is a frame, and we tend to get sort of have a bullseye feeling, a bullseye effect in compositions that don't engage the edges of the picture plane, and people stay right in the middle. So by touching the edges, not touching them, but going past them, I wouldn't want the edge of the coffee cup to only barely make it to the edge. I want it clearly on or clearly going off the page.
And I have to tell you that we have a super chat.
All right. Enrique, thank you so much. He says, thanks for these classes. As a member of your site, I can access all the courses.
That's a question. As a member of your site, can I access all the courses? Yeah, absolutely. All the courses are included with membership. It really is an incredible deal. Take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, of course, but it is a great deal. And Jan goes on and says that the Jane's Black is from the creator, Jane Blundell, who I guess works with Daniel Smith.
Oh, okay. I used to, my wife used to make this wonderful chicken dish called Shanti's curry chicken, and I thought it was called Shanti's curry chicken, and I didn't know what Shanti's was. Turns out it was that's a first name,
right?
So kind of like Jane's Black, it was Shanti's curry chicken. And he was Suzanne Sommer's chef.
Oh, okay. Because I was wondering if it was somebody your wife knew.
Right, and I thought it was named
Suzanne Sommer's chef.
Is that right, Susan Summers?
Time Master.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So I guess she had a personal chef, and
let's see, what was the show she was on with?
And that's him.
Patrick
and
Duffy.
He makes a great chicken dish a curry chicken dish. So,
what was the show that she was on with Patrick Duffy? Wasn't it Patrick Duffy?
Gosh,
you know what I'm talking about, right?
I don't know. I'm not.
And they had all the kids. They had the little blonde kid with the glasses. Anybody who remembers that show?
That's ringing a bell.
Yeah,
blonde kid.
Is
with
it
glasses.
Step by Step?
It might have been. I don't know. I watched all those shows back in like the 80s. Okay. Drawings in place. We're going to start adding some color now. And, this is 7 inches tall, but we're going to cover it all with 2 or 3 layers. So it's going to feel like a big drawing. So we've got 32 minutes to go. And that's not a lot of time for this drawing. Since there is a background, the table, and the table's important. That's partly why it's here. To have the cast shadows. There's actually a cast shadow up here from an object that is off of the outside of the composition, and then another one down here.
And for those of you who are wondering, the show was Step by Step.
Step by Step.
Yeah. I used to watch that show in college when I would eat my lunch. Because it would come on at like 11:30.
But you weren't eating your curry chicken.
No, I was eating chicken, though. I usually got Chick-fil-A in the Brickyard, and then took it to my dorm. And
in the Brickyard. Matt went to college in prison.
All right, we got another super chat.
All right, Brenda, thank you so much, and happy Wednesday to you. Wednesdays are always good days.
Yeah, if you missed that over the noises that our little heads were making, Brenda says, happy Wednesday, and happy Wednesday to you too, Brenda. We'll see you in just a little while again in the chat box for the live lessons.
There we go. Made a little mistake in my pencil drawing. I left out one of the changes in direction, so I just took this opportunity to make an adjustment in the oil pastel. So this brown that I'm using is I don't know how it looks on your screen, because all of our screens are calibrated differently, but it's a warm brown compared to my reference, and so we're gonna cool it down with some blue here in a little bit. So I want to be careful to leave some tooth, and then of course we'll mix all that in with our brown again.
And Buddy is asking, will the oil pastel not smear with the graphite? And the lighter colors, you might still see a little bit of the graphite, but for the most part, it's not that big of a deal. The darker colors are going to cover the graphite completely.
And I do have a kneaded eraser that I will use on the cup a little bit. So, good question. But I'm going to get right up against at least with the edges that meet my background, which is most of them. I'm going to try to get right up against the pencil, so that with this darker color or darker area. This brown could be darker, and it'll need to be darker in places. So I am using very limited grouping of colors, and so that'll force mixing, and that will encourage harmony. So sometimes it's nice to have the full set, and sometimes it can be beneficial to work with less.
And Nicole says folds are hard.
Yeah.
But you know what? Folds do a lot to tell us about the form of whatever we're drawing. And with folds, you want to try to get the shapes of value as accurate as possible. But if you're a little off, it's not that big of a deal. Just try to concentrate on the shapes of color and value that you see instead of thinking of them as folds.
That's good. Then this cloth, this orange cloth, if you squint your eyes at it, you can almost just divide it into two shapes of two values: the lighter whitish orange and then the darker orange. So that's how we're going to start. Pretty much just splitting the cloth, dividing it into shapes of only two values, and then kind of pushing out from there for a third and a fourth value eventually.
Enrique asks, the oil pastels, do they blend better than the dry pastels?
They blend differently and probably not as far. I mean, they do blend together really well, but they stay put a little bit better.
Yeah, I would say the soft pastels definitely blend a lot easier.
Yeah,
with oil pastels, I kind of like to think of oil pastels in the same way that I think of colored pencils, because their behavior on the surface is pretty similar. You can almost imagine the tip of the pastel as being the tip of a colored pencil. It's almost like you're zoomed into a colored pencil drawing, if you want to think about it that way, because with traditional soft pastels, or dry pastels as some people call them, you can layer over the top of applications and completely cover what's underneath, just like with any opaque painting medium like acrylics or oils. With oil pastels, as you can see, as Ashley is adding that blue, some of the color underneath is going to show through, just like with colored pencils.
There we go. So it's used a blue, and we've got something that's more like a gray up there right now. And I'm switching to a darker blue. It's almost like a navy blue, and I'm just going to work that into some of the darker passages on our background. Started with the background tonight.
And just like with colored pencils, I encourage folks to stay away from using that black pencil and instead mix a black using a combination of blue and brown. And you can see that as Ashley's putting that dark blue over the top of that dark brown, it almost gives you the impression that it's a black, but it's a more colorful black, which is closer to what we see in reality.
Now we will hit these same areas where I'm adding other colors. We're going to hit it all with the brown again. I do have a black, and I plan to use it a little bit. The coffee in the cup is super dark, and we'll need the black for that, and we may use it in other places, but just because you're in a shadow, like Matt's talking about, doesn't necessarily mean you got to pull out the black. It's a shadow.
Yeah, using a black should be the last resort in any colored drawing or painting. Although some blacks, and I'm thinking, certain colored pencil brands produce
white down
varied intensities in black. The Prismacolor pencils that I use most frequently, the black is very strong and tends to make things look unnatural. But I'm thinking maybe in the Color Soft line, the black is a little bit more forgiving, a little bit more natural looking, so it varies from manufacturer. Yeah, Artifacts says, from color theory, blue and brown mixes a range of great grays. Actually, according to color theory, if you mix, you can think of brown. Brown is kind of a combination of two complementary colors, or if you mix a blue and an orange together, you're going to get a brown. If you mix all the primary colors together, though, you can end up with kind of a gray color.
Brown or gray. It just depends on how much blue you put in there.
Right. It seems kind of counterintuitive because when you mix, for example, blue and orange, those are complementary colors, but we know that orange is made by yellow and red.
Yeah, they're both in there.
So it's basically you're mixing the primary colors. But it depends on how far you take that mixture as to whether you end up with brown or whether you end up with a gray. And Buddy asks, is there a blending pencil for oil pastels such as colored pencils? Yeah, some manufacturers make a colorless blender that you can use, and it's just like the colorless blender that you would find in a colored pencil line. So with a colorless blender with colored pencils, we basically have the wax binder and with no pigment. And the same thing's true for the oil pastel blenders. It's basically just the oil binder without any pigment. So it allows you to go over the top of what you've already applied and kind of work some of that color, move some of that color into the tooth of the paper. So it does a similar effect as a colorless blender with colored pencils. That's another reason why I see the similarities between oil pastels and colored pencils. Especially since there are oil-based colored pencils. The polychromos pencils are oil-based, of course. And so there you go. All right, we've got another super chat.
Wow.
And
Fantastic. Thank you.
This is from Renee S. And thank you so much, Renee. We appreciate that, of course. And Orion Nebula says, I'll assume that a light color would be similar to blending with a white or cream pencil. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of carryover between oil pastels and colored pencils. In fact, if you zoomed into a colored pencil drawing really quick, it probably would look a little bit like Ashley's drawing right now.
Mm-hmm. It's just like they're miniature versions of oil pastels.
It's like we're zoomed in about 100 times.
Yeah. All right. So we've got some background in place. Our shadow down here is pretty apparent now, so we're going to switch over to the cup. And I'm going to actually start with the white and just put this white in everywhere it's very light for right now. So there's no other pastel on the cup, which is going to muddy our initial application of white. We'll muddy it up here later, which when I say later, I mean in like 2 minutes. All right, another bright white edge on our rim. There we are. And I'm going to go ahead and put some white where the light is coming into the cup. Maybe not completely cover the page there. All right. Can't leave out part of our handle. Some of that handle is turning towards the light. And now we'll switch to a gray. The gray is probably not going to be dark enough by itself, but we'll go ahead and use the gray to separate the light from the dark. Take a little bit of that into the white, just so it's not too sharp of an edge there. Similar to how I intend to work on the cloth, bump in that cloth with mostly just 2 values. That's how I'm starting the cup, just separating light from dark, and then we can try to drill down on it after that.
There's some talk about the colorless blenders. Yeah, some manufacturers make them and include them in the sets. If you are looking for a cheaper option, I would explore the Expressionist Pastels by Craypaw. The set that I have, if I remember correctly, had a colorless blender in there. And as others have mentioned, you can also pick up individual colorless blenders with any manufacturer that produces them as well. You might have to order that, though. And Buddy has a good question. She's asking, how do the school oil pastels or the scholastic oil pastels differ from the ones that are made for fine art finished pieces? And I I've got some of the Sennelier pastels over there, so I don't want to disturb you in your timed drawing. But
maybe at the end, we can use some extra space,
the difference
on the paper and a similar color, and just put both down.
Yeah, it's a dramatic difference. The Sennelier oil pastels are almost like moving thick oil paint around on the surface, where the cheaper you go or the least expensive you go, the more it's going to behave more like a crayon. So I think that's a good analogy, because there's less pigment in the cheaper varieties, like the Scholastic ones.
Right.
So they're not going to be quite as oily and thick. The Craypa oil pastels, the Expressionist oil pastels are probably somewhere in the middle, kind of a mid-range quality oil pastel.
We are getting a little bit of black in here now, and it's important to make these little black marks really close together before we blend it with another color, so that it looks as even as possible.
And just continuing to talk about oil pastels here, I think oil pastels are one of the best mediums for teaching art. A lot of art teachers choose to use it because you can teach all kinds of things with it. It's a colored medium, but it's also very easy to draw with. It's easy to clean up. It is a little bit messy, but not too bad. And you can teach things like color theory relatively easily with these without a big mess.
It's true. Mostly your hands get dirty. All right, we'll brush a little bit of that off.
Now, actually, there's a brush in that drawer if you want to.
This one?
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Oh, yeah. There we go. Nice.
Still have 17 minutes on the clock.
All right. Yeah, I'm keeping my eye on that because I'm a little nervous about finishing under 45 or in 45 minutes with this one.
Now, I see that you're picking up on that subtle difference in the shadow where it's a little bit lighter on the left side and a little bit darker, closer to the middle. Or at least seems to be that way. Maybe due to contrast.
Yeah, could be just our impression, but we still see it. So after I get a few layers down, sometimes I actually back off on the pressure a little bit to try to blend and mix and move around what's already there. And there's a danger of sort of digging down and cutting through your pastels. Okay, there we go. Breaking out another tool. This is for fingernails, but it's great for scraping away oil pastel from places it doesn't belong. You can also use scissors for that. All right, we'll get darker still inside of the cup. Remember, we just started with just two values, white and gray, or white and a single gray, and gradually spreading these out.
Someone's asking if you are using a blender right now. I think you're using the black. Right?
I've only used oil pastels for blending. So I put a little bit more black in here, and then without much pressure, I'm going to use the gray again over it to soften and blend and mix with not much pressure.
Buddy is asking, do you need a special paper using oil pastel or pastel matte do its job? Buddy, I actually wouldn't recommend using pastel matte with oil pastels. You can, but that surface is it really has a heavy tooth.
It's going to eat them up.
Yeah, I would try maybe working with Canson-Mitant's pastel paper, or there is a paper called oil paper. I have a little bit of it. It's designed for painting with oils, but it's definitely acceptable for use with oil pastels. It does have a pretty pronounced heavy tooth. That allows you to put a lot of the oil pastels on them. In the oil pastel course over at thevirtualinstructor.com, I use some of that oil paper in one of the demonstrations in that course. And I like the paper. It wasn't my favorite for oil pastels. Really, my favorite for oil pastels is the Mitance pastel paper.
That is a hard-to-beat paper.
It is really a versatile paper. You can use it for lots of different media.
All right, so we've got a mixture of black and blue now inside of our cup. I'm sorry, black and brown.
Edie makes a comment that really hits home to me. She says, I don't see what the point is of using cheap materials. One doesn't have to spend the federal national debt, but one has to spend something. If you can't afford good materials, it's time to get a job. And I do get a lot of comments on YouTube, and sometimes people will write me in anger because I'm using high quality materials and encouraging you to do the same. But it really does make a huge difference in what you can do with the materials. The quality does matter, and you have to pay for quality sometimes. And if creating art is something that's important to you, then that's something that you might have to invest some money in to get high quality materials. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with practicing with cheaper materials, but if you're getting frustrated in the art that you're able to create, you might try, bumping things up a little bit and go for a higher quality material, because sometimes that can make all the difference. There's great variety in quality in oil pastels, in colored pencils. When you're talking about graphite pencils and charcoal, there's not really.
I tell you
variety.
What, I have had some bad vine charcoal.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, believe it or not, you wouldn't think you could mess that up. But I had some Yarka. I shouldn't say. We typically don't talk bad about manufacturers. I guess maybe I shouldn't say this, but I already have. So cat's out of the bag. I had some Yarka vine charcoal one time. That was just horrible. It was horrible.
Was it just really hard and inconsistent?
Yeah, it was hard. It had really hard spots in it that you would hit, and it would make these weird scratchy marks through the charcoal that was already on your paper. And typically vine charcoal is really soft, and so it was kind of strange.
Mary is asking, do you use a sealer or a spray? And you've talked about this before.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit anytime we use oil pastels, really. And you don't have to use anything over an oil pastel other than, if you're going to frame it, of course, put it behind some glass, something like that. But I have used, on student artwork anyway, I have used floor wax before, just in a spray bottle. Just sprayed some floor wax across it and then brushed it out with a soft brush. And it seemed to do fine for about a decade, and that's about when I started using it. So I don't know how it'll hold up in 100 years, but it does provide a little bit of a protective coating, if you will. You can still scratch through it, but at least something kind of brushing across it isn't going to disturb the oil pastel if it's got some extra wax on there. You can store your artwork with like a paper cover or wax paper cover, so that any artwork on top of it doesn't get stuck to its surface.
And that's what I do. I just store my artwork in drawers until it's ready to be framed and matted.
There you go.
I'm not a big fan of spray fixative, but there is a place for spray fixative. Of course, you can use it for
regular pastels.
Extend the tooth of the paper a little bit.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. It'll rough it up a little bit. I didn't think about that. Be a good idea. All right, so I'm just hitting our cloth with just an orange, just plain orange, bright orange, wherever there are shadows, because where the light hits, it just doesn't really feel that dark.
People are bringing up Cotman watercolors in the chat, and that's another thing that hits home for me, because Cotman watercolors are relatively inexpensive compared to some of the more expensive options. They're considered student or scholastic level watercolors, but I absolutely love the Cotman watercolors. Now, that being said, I do have some of the professional line of Winsor and Newton watercolors, and I tend to use them more often than the Cotman watercolors, but I do love the Cotman watercolors. That is kind of an exception to the rule, where they're not cheap, but they're also not expensive. But they're really pretty
they perform well,
and I think that just kind of falls in line with Winsor and Newton. They produce high quality artwork.
That's true. Even their student grade materials are pretty good.
Yeah,
I have to say, compared to another brand's student grade materials.
Another place we kind of see that is with the Liquitex Basics. Those are acrylic paints, and those are pretty good. They're not as good as the heavy body Liquitex.
The Goldens, or the heavy bodied paints.
But Liquitex does make the Basics. You get a lot more paint.
A lot of paint. There's a few colors that are a little bit transparent, but pigments are more opaque or transparent. So you got to be careful with the yellows and a couple of the greens in the Liquitex Basics as far as covering power goes. But you can always mix the Basics with a heavy-bodied alternative just for those colors.
And the Cotmans, just to follow up, the Cotman watercolors are available as pan watercolors and tubes. So you have your preference there. The tube paints always seem more intense to me, but that's due to the fact that they are a little bit, when you squeeze them out of the tube, they're pretty liquid and ready to go. With the pans, of course, you have to moisten them up a little bit to get them raring to go. So it might just be a little bit of a discrepancy in how the material is delivered. But if you want more intensity in your watercolor paintings, then work with tube watercolors, and you'll see the difference immediately. But if you want a little bit more control,
definitely.
I typically like to work with the pan watercolors because I like to kind of layer the watercolor applications a little bit more, and using lighter translucent applications helps me with that. So
you don't want to just drop in super heavy saturated colors.
Right.
So I've been using a gray in my orange shadows a little bit. That's just to mute that in places that are shadowy anyway. We're going to use a red in there for some of the darkest areas, and there's a little hot spot, little red triangle in the middle. So we'll make sure that we hit that with a red also.
And earlier on, I was talking about just paying attention to the shapes of color and value to create the illusion of folds, and you can really see those shapes of initial applications, those shapes of color and value initially here.
Yeah, just flat,
and Ashley
shapes.
can continue to refine that and make smaller and smaller shapes as much as the oil pastel tips will allow him.
Yeah, that's right.
To continue to create that illusion.
All right, let's see. Go ahead and grab a red.
Ryan Nebula makes a good point. She puts her tube paint into a pan and lets them dry, and that is kind of a middle of the road approach.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that have done that.
Yeah.
They buy the really nice ones and then get a nice palette to go with it, and just squeeze them all out and let them dry. A nice big palette. I'll try a little. I'm looking for a hot red. I guess this is as hot as it's going to get.
You might add a little bit of orange to it.
Yeah, could do that. It's going into orange, but I still feel like it's got a pinkish quality to it. All right. And we will use, we use sort of a cream color where it's light, but we could stand to put some orange in there. Ooh. For a minute, I thought I'd lost the orange. All right, so a little bit of I've got about 6 minutes or so. So I'm just pulling some of my lighter color into places that were originally dark shapes, and I'll kind of go the other way a little bit too. Maybe pull some of the darker colors into smaller areas where there was more light, and see if we can marry these separate shapes together just a bit more.
And ever since we talked about Suzanne Summers,
Yeah.
I've had the theme for Step by Step.
Oh,
in my
yeah.
mind.
I can hear it too.
I think it's Days Go By. I'm not going to sing it.
Go ahead.
I think that's what the theme song was. I think that's what's in my head.
Now, I've got a different tune in my head. What am I thinking of? Is there another song called Step by Step or something like that?
Step by step,
That I'm
day
getting.
by day. No, maybe I'm thinking of a different step by step, day by day. Is that how it goes?
Oh, I think so. We're going to have to look it up. Because these are the things we have to know. All right, there we go. I like where that landed.
Yeah, Suzanne Summers was in Three's Company too. Yeah. No, Step by
Was she?
Nicole Smith is talking
that?
about the New Kids on the Block song. That's what I think you're thinking.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm so
Step
embarrassed.
by step.
I am so embarrassed.
Oh,
Don't,
baby.
Matt, don't tell anybody.
Got
about
to
this.
get to you, girl, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Oh, wow. Oh, it's tough. I'm not going to recover from this. All right, let's see. Now, I feel like I need to be lighter in parts of the background right now than what is showing up on the feed.
Yeah, maybe around the coffee.
Yeah, it looks okay to me in person, but I can see on the screen it's not. It's a little bit.
Everything's a little bit darker.
Yeah, a little bit darker. So we're just going to push that out a little bit. Because that's
June says, my napkin does not look like a napkin. And well, that's because it's a handkerchief, not a napkin.
There you go. And
Now, I know the New Kids on the Block song.
you probably play it. You can probably play it on your drums.
No, I don't play New Kids on the Block on the drums.
Just kidding.
Break.
They use drums. I'm sure.
I don't think they had a drummer.
Some
I think they had a drum
synthesizer.
machine.
Right.
No, my wife was a big New Kids on the Block fan.
Okay.
And I think she went to a New Kids on the Block concert at one point.
I'm sure she did. You know, they were all the rage
Like
at one
in
time.
adulthood.
Oh, no. Oh, my gosh. I was going to say like in middle school.
I might be not remembering that correctly, but I'm not sure.
A little bit of.
I have some shapers in the drawer
some of
too,
these.
if you-
Okay. I'm just
want to
kind of
use
knocking
those.
some of these high spots down a little bit. And then we're going to do a little bit of, we're going to put the cracks in the table. That's important. The way the light shows up in a few places, I think is important for us to see and understand the intensity.
June asked, Matt, does one of your courses cover folds? No, I don't have a course on that, but I do have a standalone video, and it's free for everyone. If you just look on the channel and you look for how to draw fabric folds, you'll find it. And I did a drawing with pastels, actually. And it's just a bunch of folds. The entire drawing is an entire, like a silk cloth.
Mm-hmm. Looks good. I've seen it.
But he says, I never know how you do it. Painting, explaining, chatting, and watching the screen at the same time. It's because I was a teacher in the classroom, and Ashley is a teacher in the classroom. When you're an art teacher, you have to manage lots of things, including a classroom of kids, while you're trying to demonstrate and talk and discipline. So
we just like this in the classroom, we'll be talking about art, then we'll accidentally start talking about some show on Netflix because some kid brought it up, and then go back to talking about art, and then the bell rings. So.
Buddy does not know who New Kids on the Block is.
Well, that is lucky.
NKOTB is an acronym for New Kids on the Block. They are definitely not new kids anymore. They are old men.
All right, I'm just scraping away the pastel now.
So you're scraping that away with a blade or
with a nail tool.
Oh,
that I got from my house.
Okay.
I think it's for pushing your cuticles back, something clearly I never do.
Yeah,
but
I guess people do that.
I guess my daughter does. I guess.
clip my nails after I've scratched myself.
Right.
By accident.
Ow, that hurt. It's time for some grooming.
Kind of long.
Yeah, so I'm just using this up against the black mark that I put in for the cracks in the table in a few places.
Lord Engine says Old Men on the Block sounds kind of creepy, though.
Yeah, sure.
Old Men on the Block sounds like a Martin Scorsese film.
Yeah. All right.
Nicole Smith says that she's a 20-plus year vet special ed teacher here. Thank you so much, Nicole, for being a teacher. We know how special teachers are, and what it takes a special person to be a teacher. So I know that you love your students, you love your kids,
and even if you don't hear it from them, you do know that, and that you're making a difference in their life.
Yes, absolutely.
You probably think back and dwell sometimes on your own teachers, and they'll do that with you as well.
And to make it 5 years as a teacher is an accomplishment. To make it 20 plus years is quite an achievement.
That is right. All right. Well, we have hit our time limit, so I was just kind of pumping up a few of these lights one more time, smoothing them out a little bit where they'd gotten a touch muddy.
And just add those finishing touches.
Yeah.
I think you have a very painterly drawing there.
Thank you.
It still has its pastel-y qualities, but still
the paper
painterly.
Contributed to that, I think. But we see a lot of mark making in there, and for a 45-minute sketch, I don't hate it. And of course, we'll do a critique show in how many more? See, what week is this? Is this week 6 or 7?
Let's see. This is 8.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. So you've got one more, and I've got one more, and then it's our critique show.
Right. I actually have 2 more. Remember?
Oh, that's right. Wait a minute. 9,
I have 2 more. I'm going to do 2 next week.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay. So still just 2 more shows, but 3 more artworks. It's a bonus in there.
Yeah, 3 more artworks. Yeah. And I'm saying maybe you can hear the grin that I have on my mouth. Because I have a trick up my sleeve. Now, I will tell you one of the artists that I'm doing next week, but not both of them.
Okay. So you at least know who one of them is. Well, you probably know who
both of them are.
Okay.
But I'm only going to reveal if I told you who the other one was.
That would be it.
Then people would know my trickery.
Okay. Well, we can't do that. You got to come check out the show next week and see what kind of trick Matt has up his sleeves for us. All right. Well, I'm going to keep working until you tell me to stop. No, I'm going to stop. I guess we're done here. Should I pull the tape off?
Yeah, definitely.
Do the tape.
Yeah.
All right.
See those edges.
Right.
I really think those scrape marks you made a huge difference.
Oh, they did. That was sort of the cherry on top. Mm-hmm. It really needed that.
Like highlights in the eye.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. I just put just a couple of them in. I almost went crazy and put them along every black line, but I held back, and I think it works. All right. So let's go ahead and start. I will back out a little bit so that we can see the tape. There we go. And there's got extra tape.
Looks great.
Got all kinds of tape.
And while you're doing that, we do have another super chat.
All right, a numbers girl.
Yeah.
Thank you, a numbers girl.
Thanks so much.
And she says, "Thanks, guys. Well, you're welcome.
You're very welcome.
And thank you."
If you guys weren't here, Matt and I might sit in his studio and draw together, but probably not as regularly as we do. So we're glad you're here. You make the show happen.
Yeah, we would just I don't know if we would draw.
Probably play some ping pong or something, you know. So. All right, so I'm pulling low and away in 90-degree angle from the artwork. It's nice. Now my hands are so sort of dingy right now, and I might have to break out.
Why don't you use the nail tool?
Yeah, that's what I got.
Scrape all the trash
it.
underneath your fingernails.
I'm picking it up. I'm using a nail tool on the tape. No tearing. And I did tape across my pants a couple of times with each strip before I put it down on the paper. So there was already a little bit of like khaki lint on there to keep the tape from being too sticky.
Khaki lint is the best.
The best lint of all.
The best adhesive reducer. Jean lint does not work as well as khaki lint.
Jean lint?
Jean lint.
Yeah, it's too strong, too boisterous.
All right, that looks great.
All right, awesome. Oops, I was trying
Especially
to...
at those edges.
There we go.
It's really
we got some nice sharp edges now, and I feel like that contributes to that painterly look. I do have some stray pencil marks where I was measuring out my composition. I got to get rid of that. It's driving me crazy.
Lots of folks are commenting on how great your piece looks.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I do think it has a hopper feel.
I hope so. I hope the cup feels lonely, isolated.
Well, it's got its handkerchief friend there with it.
It's true.
Maybe somebody was drinking coffee and sobbing. And
in a hopper painting.
Right.
That seems about right.
They're sitting in a cafe all by themselves.
Right. They're looking around. It's 3 a.m.
They're sad at their loneliness.
Nothing but the street light beaming in. So very sad.
All right.
Edward Hopper. All right. Well, that was a lot of fun.
All right. We'll switch back out and say goodbye to everybody. And I'll reveal the artist that I'm doing next week. So we'll do that now. All right, guys. I certainly enjoyed watching Ashley create that piece. I hope you did too. And if you followed along, I hope you're happy with what you created, or if you're planning on doing it sometime in the future. Of course, I'm hoping that your artwork turns out great as well. I hope you were able to pick up a couple of things about oil pastels and Edward Hopper, of course. Next week, I will be doing the artwork, and I'm going to be doing Renee Magritte. That's going to be my artist. And I'm pretty confident that I'm going to be, I'm obviously not confident because I'm thinking about it in my mind. I was kind of going back and forth between using graphite and white charcoal or colored pencils. So one or the other will be what we use next week. I will maybe a combination of markers and colored pencils. We'll see.
But we know it's Renee Magritte.
Right. I know what I'm going to do as far as subject matter, and I'm not going to reveal that yet, but we'll do that next week. But I will have, of course, the materials that we're going to be using when I set up the video for next week, which will be on Wednesday in the morning, and I'll also have the photo reference up as well. I'm going to do 2 artists next week. So I'm going to do another artist that will be a surprise, and you will probably all groan when I reveal it and make my artwork, but that's okay. There'll be a lesson to be taught there. Ashley, you have anything else for folks?
I didn't realize, or I forgot that Matt was doing Renee Magritte. So I guess we had 2 surrealists in the style of this year or this season, because I did Dali and you did Magritte, but they're very different artists, even though they're supposedly from the same movement. So it'll be nice to see the contrast there. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Wednesday and rest of your week.
And Edie says, is that the artist who did the painting of the guy with the face blocked by an apple? Yes,
that's right.
That's the artist. And if you've ever seen the movie Thomas Crown Affair, they do a really cool thing with Magritte in that movie.
Really? I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
I'll have to watch it. If it's got sort of an art slant to it.
It's about an art thief. And
wait a minute. Does that have Pierce Brosnan in it?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I've seen pieces of it.
Yeah,
I just haven't seen the whole thing.
Russo.
Yeah. I've seen pieces of it.
Yeah, it's pretty good because it also teaches you about the difference between oil paints and water.
No kidding.
Paints.
No kidding. How about that? All right,
and that kind of is part of the whole finale of the movie, along with Magritte stuff.
Ooh.
It's pretty.
It's like art nerd.
It is an art nerd movie. So
that's awesome.
for sure. I watched it many, many years ago. So, but anyway, if you like this video, make sure you give it a like. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and all that good stuff. And we'll see you next week for episode 9 of season 11. And then we'll have one more episode after that where we draw, and then we'll have our critique show. So we have 3 more shows left in this season, and I hope you'll join us for all of them. With that, I'm going to go ahead and sign out for this evening. Good night, everybody.